Namaskar, welcome back. Viewers, some of you may be surprised, but despite the carpet coverage of Operation Sindoor in the past few days, there are still many interesting elements of this historic operation which need a better, a more in-depth understanding, such as the far-reaching reforms initiated by our armed forces of Jointness and Agniveers in the recruitment process. So, on Media Scan this weekend, how far did the reforms of Jointness and Agniveers contribute in making Operation Sindoor a resounding success? So, we have a team of stalwarts today on Media Scan who will help us understand these interesting topics better. But before that, a quick backgrounder.
Operation Sindoor will be remembered for many firsts in India's military history. One of them is the Atmanirbharta, or self-reliance in the Indian defense, which changed the entire rules of the game. From L-70 guns to Akashteer to BrahMos, Make in India made the whole world sit up and take notice. But it is not about Atmanirbharta alone. Some much-needed reforms in the defense sector, such as the Jointness of the forces and Agnipath Yojana, made all the difference by ensuring precision and minimal losses on our side. Jointness refers to the process of integration among three services: the Army, Air Force, and the Navy, for maximum synergy and coordination. The process of integration, which is still a work in progress, was visible at all levels during the 4 days of Operation Sindoor. Perhaps the most debated reform in defense so far, the recruitment of Agniveers, has come as the biggest surprise. More than 3,000 Agniveers handled multiple responsibilities during Operation Sindoor. Their performance has proved that the decision to make our forces a younger, leaner and a more agile military was not only timely but also visionary. So, will the doubting Thomases who questioned Make in India, Jointness and Agniveer stop their campaign now?
So, after that quick backgrounder, let's move to our guest for the evening. I have here with me in the DD studios, Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor. You have heard him on previous occasions on Doordarshan. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
Also joining me, Lieutenant General D.P. Pandey. Welcome, sir, and I hope your perspective will give us some knowledge of what is going on.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'd like to come to Air Marshal Kapoor quickly here. Sir, though we have been looking at the outcomes of Operation Sindoor for several days now, people are still a little foggy about how much we have achieved or what we have not. If I were to ask you, sir, for the benefit of our viewers, say 1, 2 or 3 biggest outcomes of Operation Sindoor, how would you put it?
See, we have achieved certain things which we had never achieved earlier. So, for benefit of your viewers, I'll put it down in a manner that we have been able to punish the perpetrators, and we did a calibrated and measured response. The Indian Air Force went deep and struck inside, which was never done before.
Yes.
And all the 4 factors, which diplomatically is called DIME, that is diplomatic, informational, military and economic, all 4 means were used, and for the first time the nation was able to bring the enemy to its knees within precisely 3.5 days. And
you think this must be the shortest so far in this kind of a skirmish?
Yes, the strikes which began on 6th, 7th midnight were built up in a escalatory manner, and this is what has surprised the enemy and the world. They have never seen the offensive role of Indian Air Force. All along, ever since independence, we have always retaliated after the preemptive strike, but this is the first time, and after 71 war is the first time that we have gone inside Pakistani Punjab. All the skirmishes that have taken before earlier in the conflicts after 71 were primarily restricted to Pak occupied Jammu and Kashmir and that region. Be it Uri, be it Balakot, or be it Kargil, all operations were limited to that area. So somewhere in the Pakistani Punjab, that feeling was there that we are absolutely safe and there is no way Indian Air Force or Indian Armed Forces can come into this region. So this was a myth that was busted, in my opinion.
Fine, fine. Let me come to General Pandey here. Sir, the Prime Minister was very emphatic and categorical in listing out 3 resolves in the light of the Pahalgam attack and subsequently Operation Sindoor. Those 3 outcomes, which have been repeated on several occasions, we would like to know from you how far militarily and psychologically they will impact Pakistan as far as our future relationship is concerned vis-a-vis terror and also the rest of the world.
Okay, the thing is that in this instant case, I think there could not have been a very clear military mandate which was given to us by the political administration dispensation. And that was to strike perpetrators of the Pahalgam incident and destroy them and make them into dust, right? So that was very clearly achieved within that first night itself by us. But very importantly, what is also this thing is that we have to go into the background. How this success was achieved. It was not achieved overnight. I think there was a whole level of preparation for such an environment which will come about in a future time in which investments across the entire security framework was carried out by the present dispensation, I think in last about 10 odd years. One very important cog in the wheel was this whole Atmanirbharta. It was primarily the compulsion and some degree of forced, I believe, because very few takers were there that there is a possibility that we will be able to make in India and thereafter ensure that the quality and everything is available and we'll be able to integrate those systems into the existing systems. So the credit goes to the political dispensation, of course, but also to the industrial environment. They rose to the occasion, the academia, R&D, and everything which came about to be synergized in the effort, wherein the systems which were older systems already existing, the newer systems which were made in India were able to be harmonized for this operation. So earlier what used to happen is, for example, let's say we have wanted to carry out a strike, the Americans will come to know because we'll be using their satellite navigation systems.
Yes.
Right. The communication systems will be listened on to by the Chinese, by the West. But this time there was such a great security cover, the silence on the operation, but nobody could find out what was going to happen. And our own satellites were able to actually see, collect, collate, direct our systems for operations. So I look at this one very, very resounding success of the project which was taken by us, by the governments, to ensure that we go in for Atmanirbharta and there is some degree of this thing. The second is this whole transition into jointmanship, the synergistic effort, the tri-services, while they used to carry out a certain degree of synergy.
General Pandey, allow me to interrupt you here. Let me get a take on Atmanirbharta from Air Marshal Kapoor, and then we shall have a chat on this jointness and other reforms. Air Marshal Kapoor, quickly, sir, your take on how far Atmanirbharta or this self-reliance in defense manufacturing and defense technology was helpful in hoodwinking the adversary and helping us achieve success in Operation Sindoor.
Absolutely, like General Pandey said, that the balance tilted in our favor because we were Atmanirbhar. The DRDO, the agencies like BEL, HAL, ISRO collaborated and developed so many equipment, especially after 2019, with indigenized satellite integration. The L-70 guns, the Army Air Defense guns were integrated. There are two people whom I would like to give credit who are not there with us in this world today. One is Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, because he brought in BrahMos and Akash, which has made a huge difference in this conflict. And second is Dr. Manohar Parrikar, who was the defense minister during 2018 when India decided to buy S-400. and he was the defense minister when we bought Rafales. So these things were integrated in our own systems. The Akashteer and the IACCS, Integrated Air Command and Control Center, was integrated with every sensor by our own engineers.
Yes.
And the best part is our own engineers, our own scientists calibrated the Western and the Russian equipment to be integrated with Indian manufactured things. And this is what the world did not expect. They
Yes.
never expected that their equipment would work with our integrated setup, and that is what took them by surprise.
And if I'm not wrong, if we believe some of the commentators who have been writing lately, it seems it was Akashteer which took all the experts globally really by surprise, you know, how we achieved that success. But coming back to some of the reforms that General Pandey was just beginning to talk about, sir, when the issue of jointness was started getting discussed, and with the appointment of the CDS position in the Indian Armed Forces, there were some reservations from certain quarters about how we will be able to achieve it and whether it is really required or not. Do you think Operation Sindoor has kind of put a stamp on that, because we saw this jointness integration reflected at many levels during this period?
You know, jointness and synergy, even in the West, in America, which was launched somewhere about 50 years back, has not been perfected. It's a work in progress. Right. So is the case in our case. But when the DMA was announced and CDS was announced, actually, I was the ADG Strategic Communication, and I was very closely dealing with the subject. Even I was surprised when the Prime Minister announced from the Red Fort that we are going for a CDS. We always thought it was going to be permanent chairman, chief of staff committee. That will come about. So this reform has been a major transformation in after our independence, because while we were operating in certain degree of jointness, but at the tactical level wherein some operation was to be carried out, the teams were organized of Air Force, Navy and Army to achieve a success in certain operation. But the scale at which this time synergy has been achieved through jointmanship is something very surprising. Even a person like me who has just retired, the outcomes have really taken me also by surprise. I'm sure the enemy will be also quite surprised. So starting from, in the, let's say, AD framework, starting from the guns which are manning the borders of an infantry or an AD gunner, from manpads which are being handled by AD gunners of Indian Army, to the soft kill equipment which are supposed to spoof and take over or take control of the drones which are being sent across by the enemy. This going right till S-400, the integration which was achieved has been achieved only, I think, because of DMA was in place. Let's say if this structure was not there, for the three services which are very, very proud and have different cultures to carry out operations, it would have been very difficult for them to actually synergize and carry out operations in such a manner that virtually a wall was presented to the enemy, which brought in all forms, from smallest of drones to the lighter ammunition, to missiles, to long-range missiles, including all set of equipment which was brought across this thing. They were all blocked. And similarly, a synergized effort to make a breach into the enemy's AD systems, which was supported by the Turkish, by the Americans, by the Chinese. About 80% of their equipment comes from China. We were able to successfully breach. This would have not happened if the joint was not there.
Fine,
the
fine.
second part of joint.
Yes, quickly, sir.
Is the demand procedure. 5 years back or 10 years back, our ammunitions were at much, much lower stocking levels. The powers which has been given thanks to the reform and the clearances which take place at the vice chief's level, and also of higher acquisition which goes down to the DMA, wherein the entire thing is compiled together and projected to the CCS, has much more faster clearances mechanism. So this time on, our ammunition stocks are pretty high, right? Similarly, procurement of modern systems, equipment, which has been taken, has also been pretty effective. So the jointness is not only in operations at a tactical level or fighting the war. It is also in the back end where there are a number of things which need to be synergized and taken care of, and so that we are efficient, effective, and we have the maximum buck for money which we get allotted.
Fine, fine. I'll come to Marshal Kapoor here on the same subject. Sir, I am reminded of those days when I was reporting every day on this sector, and it was a common headline every week that we have only 1 week's ammunition left, we have only 2 weeks ammunition left, we have a month's ammunition left. From that to this situation where General Pandey is talking about the stocks, I will not ask him details of that, but it does show that when the Prime Minister gave the vision with the, of course, with the cooperation of the armed forces, that jointness is the need of the hour, and it will help us in the modern warfare that we are now witnessing live. What is your take on this?
See, when a few years ago, we revamped the ordnance factories. We drew out and divided into 7 different verticals, with each vertical getting its autonomy. The private sector's integration, the guns and the artillery shells and others being manufactured by Kalyani Forge, Bharat Forge, and Solar Industries, and the other associated companies in India is outstanding. The contribution by L&T, Mahindra, Tata Aerospace, and the other verticals who have Adanis, who have put in so much of effort in last about 5 to 7 years to manufacture for our defense forces. Their engineers and scientists, along with the IIT students, are now with the frontline units and squadrons. They are seeing what is needed at the cutting edge. They go back to the drawing board and make those things. And I think so somewhere the loop has been shortened, and we are having sufficiency today in our ammunitions.
So the reform is not just in operational matters, it is in procurement, it is in manufacturing, it is in speeding up the process of procurement and all that. But gentlemen, we do not have much time left, so allow me to come to the next reform that has perhaps been, if we look at the subject of defense and armed forces, no issue has been debated more than this ever in our country. That is the reform in the recruitment of the Agniveers system that was introduced recently. We are now able to see in the just after the Operation Sindoor that the contribution of our young men and women who were recruited under the Agnipath Yojana, our Agniveers, have contributed immensely in making this few days of conflict a real success. So do you think this should put an end to the debates that have been going on for a very long time about how useful Agnipath is or is not, and the fact that it also became a great issue of political protest? General Pandey?
Yeah, so, there are a couple of things in this. Just quickly highlight each one of them.
Yes.
I was of this proponent for Agniveer, I think somewhere around 2008 onwards.
Right.
And in fact, I was a DGTA when I had introduced certain reforms, which are still in process, about shortening the length of services, in which we give an opportunity to larger number of youth to come in and serve the country, and also go out and do service to the nation once they have gone through this whole process of serving the country in uniform for about 4 years, and they are a useful member of the society. The bottom line is that anyone who goes through the process of training, right, he may be an Agniveer or a normal soldier, will perform and have an outcome, right? The present system of Agniveers, wherein they know that after 4 years they are going to be tested, their desire to remain to the service ensures that they keep on becoming proficient in their entire system, and they are relevant. So that is one very, very important facet of ensuring competitiveness in all forms. Will also help the organization and also help the individual, which will keep on outperforming himself. And so that even if he succeeds to stay, that is good for him and the organization. But let's say even if he goes out, is good for the country as a nation, and also to be a useful member of the society.
But General Pandey, quickly, this is precisely the argument that was being pushed again and again, that since they know they may not continue after 4 years, they may not give in their 100% as any other soldier would. This is, I'm being the devil's advocate. Yes.
Look, it is all about was about jobs, right? That is why it became political in nature.
Correct.
And this entire thing was resonating from few locations from the country where there was certain degree of political interest and also certain degree of defense academies that come about where the challenges came about.
Right.
But largely, everybody understands that if you have to modernize, if you have to be a modern army, and trust me, when you look at very, very war-fighting nations technically who are deploying all over the world, or they are fighting non-stop in their own country, like Israel or America, they have the same system, including the Chinese, which everybody tries to compare in terms of size, scale, and terms of equipment and modernization. They also have a similar system. So while, yes, it has an issue of job, I think, for which the government has taken large number of measures to firstly financially empower a person after who's served and he's going out to be able to find a job, if not job, do something on his own system outside. The second is there are a large number of reservations which are taking place in private and the government systems, wherein this person can actually join in and exploit his knowledge to serve a second inning, because he's going out from the service at the age of about 23, 24. When you compare with the rest of the country or the youth, they are also going to the job market at the similar time frame. So here is a guy who's done his job for about 4 years. He's highly competitive. He's got additional tool sets in his hand, whose skill sets are far more sharpened. It may be only in war fighting, but when you are doing this business in 4 years in the armed forces, you're also developing leadership skills. You are developing a capability of other skill sets which are technological, technical oriented, and they are going to be empowering him and the society in bringing up the whole of the society ahead. So this whole politicization, I think, was incorrect, and there will be certain tweaking which will continue to be required because there's something new which has been tried out, and I'm sure when the feedback loops goes back to the government, whatever essential tweaking will be required will be done.
Fine.
I think in the present form, it's pretty good.
Let me just move on. Marshal Kapoor, General Pandey was very subtle in saying that there were some locations in the country from where the naysayers were making their point, but we know what he meant. My question to you is, there may be tweaking needed, and I'm sure it is being considered already, but at the same time, is it not a fact that turning into a lean, agile army and armed force which is ready for the new world was required, and Agniveers vis-a-vis Operation Sindoor has made that clear to the world?
Yes, whatever inputs we are getting and my interaction with concerned people, they have performed outstandingly well.
Right.
Absolutely at no place the Agniveers were found wanting in any way compared to the normal induction. Because once you wear a uniform, your mindset changes and you are part of the huge community which has a purpose to deliver, and they were very well trained and they were able members during this 4-day operation. And I feel it is a very wise decision in this direction. The advantages has been covered by General Pandey, and I think so. The reports which we are getting informally are absolutely in that order.
So this whole argument that was started about this making 2 classes of soldiers has actually been nipped in the bud. Can we say that?
Yes, it has. And
yes,
more and more young people today, and I'm sure after this conflict, when the next round of the notices will be sent for Agniveer, I hope the numbers would be so high that it will be very difficult for the services to take in people now.
Fine. Just time enough for 2 very quick questions from both of you gentlemen. Now, since this is media scan, I cannot let you go till we have had a word on how the media conducted itself through this entire period. General Pandey, you might have noticed that the Western media, the UK, the US, other countries in that sector, especially on the first 2 days of the conflict, they were just too quick to buy whatever was being peddled by Pakistan, our adversary, and we saw all those headlines. Though subsequently they corrected themselves when India very emphatically put forth every evidence, and Pakistan had very little to show by way of evidence. But it still begs the question, why was the West so quick to buy the Pakistani propaganda? Were we lacking in some way? What improvement should our media have done to prevent such a situation?
So I will not say our media has done, but I think our armed forces also have contributed towards this by getting adequate proof to be given to the media so that they can go back to the system and the environment and inform them what exactly has been achieved by us, right? So that is one very important part. That is a time. This time I think the media was pretty responsible, except for certain degree of naysayers or, people who are, I will say, either on the payroll of the West. I will not talk about it, but largely I've seen the media landscape in which they have had range of coverage. They addressed the requirement of the masses, in which there was a requirement of actually being using their patriotism to fuel the national outrage which is required to be done. And also on to other extreme was a very sensible media which was also talking certain degree of sense. So each one has a space to operate, and we should not foreclose one for others. Second is, why is the Western media so tied into Pakistan? We have to see the historical perspective. If you see on the payroll of the Western media, you will find a large number of people have been invested. They are working within that Western media. So, you should just take out the list of the articles which have been published in New York Times or Washington Post or the Western or Al Jazeera for that matter. You will find there are people who are from Pakistan. They're working for a long, long time. So there is an investment which is institutional and state run to ensure that there's a tie-in, there's a certain degree of grip which is there between the Western media and Pakistan.
So, not much time left on the show at all, gentlemen. I'm afraid we'll have to put a stop to this very interesting conversation here. And perhaps, as you were saying, whatever bit was lacking, maybe now that our senior MPs are traveling out to the world, they will be able to put across our point of view in a more emphatic and serious manner. On that note, gentlemen, I must thank both of you, General Pandey and Air Marshal Kapoor here, for finding the time for this weekend show on Media Scan. Do join us again on some of our later episodes. Till then, thank you, gentlemen.